What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Mid-Level Media channel, your hub for everything physical media and entertainment. I am Ken. Today, guys, look, it's been a while since I've done a 10 movies from a specific year that you need to have in your collection. And today, guys, I'm bringing it back, and we are talking about 1992. This is 10 movies that you need to have from 1992 on Blu-ray or 4K. And like I said, guys, ever since we got in the 90s, I've just been really excited to talk about some of these movies, because some of these movies I grew up with. So we got another group of bangers here to talk about today. But before we get into it, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I talk about physical media on this channel, movies, owning the movies that you love, Blu-rays, 4Ks, all that good stuff. So if you like that kind of thing, hit the subscribe button. And also be sure to like this video. Always like the video. And also be sure to comment down below. There were tons of great movies that came out in 1992. I am only talking about 10 of the movies. So you're going to be saying to yourself, I can't believe he didn't mention this, he didn't mention this, he didn't mention this. People are going to mention 50, 60 movies down below. I'm only talking about 10, guys. I may do another one of these. I may do a part 2 for 1992 at some point. And then there's just some movies that I haven't seen. A lot of these movies are very close to my heart here today. There's a lot of good movies this year. But definitely comment some of your favorites in that comment section below. Open my eyes to some other great movies that came out in 1992. Let's jump right into it, guys. My first pick from 1992 that you need to have in your collection. I've been talking about Tim Burton ever since we hit 1988, and I'm going to continue to talk about Tim Burton because he was on a hell of a run. From Beetlejuice to this movie, Batman Returns, Tim Burton was on fire, and I love Batman Returns. I grew up with the 1999 Batman as well. I love that movie, but there was just something about Batman Returns when it hit. I just remember I had all the action figures and toys for this movie, but you got Danny DeVito as Penguin. Like, it doesn't get any more. I know Colin Farrell was great as the Penguin in the Batman. He was great, but it doesn't get any more classic than Danny DeVito. Maybe the older, sitcom version of the Penguin, but I just love Danny DeVito as the Penguin in this movie. And then on top of that, you got Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman. Like, there will never be a Catwoman as great as Michelle Pfeiffer. I will die on that hill. I just don't believe that it'll happen. She just chewed the scenery and just really got into that role in a way that I don't believe any other actress is capable of. I just love her in this movie. Now, I think a lot of people would actually agree with that. Yeah, like Zoe Kravitz was really good. Anne Hathaway was pretty good. But Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman is just iconic. And then you got Christopher Walken in this movie, Michael Keaton, who is my favorite Batman. And it's just the perfect superhero sequel to me. It took things in a much darker direction than the first one, and there's some truly iconic moments in this film. I love this movie so much, so quotable, and it has a real Christmas feel to it. A lot of people would call this movie a Christmas movie as well. And the 4K, guys, look, right now you can get this 4K for like $16.50. I don't know how long this sale is going to be going on, but I would absolutely recommend this 4K. It's the only one of the older Batmans that I actually bought on 4K, because I was just like, Batman Returns with all the snow and everything, that movie's going to look incredible. So I bought this on 4K, and it did not disappoint. Warner Brothers did a hell of a job with this 4K release. But Batman Returns, I love this movie so much. And honestly, like, depending on what day you ask me, might be my favorite Batman movie. I don't know, but I love this movie a lot. Tim Burton, masterpiece right there, in my opinion. Now let's get into another masterpiece. We're getting ready to have a sequel in this franchise come out in April. And this movie just hit 4K as well this past year. But let's talk about Army of Darkness from the Evil Dead franchise. Yes, this movie is a part of the Evil Dead franchise, even though it's the only movie in the franchise that doesn't have Evil Dead in the title. But Army of Darkness is it's a different kind of Evil Dead movie. It definitely takes a goofier approach, and it's the only one so far that took it outside of the cabin in the woods genre and just placed it in another time period in a medieval setting, and it just works. Like, this movie is just so good in just all the best ways. It feels epic. There's a lot of action. It has a lot of comedy, a lot of good horror in the movie as well. It definitely brings in the horror, and Bruce Campbell as Ash has just fully come into this character, and he's just completely fantastic and badass. And this is my boomstick, and so many great moments in this film for sure, and I just love it. I've always liked it, but it wasn't until I just recently watched it again in 4K was I like, damn, this movie is so good. It's just so good. It's not my favorite of the franchise, but it's definitely up there. It's actually the first one that I ever saw. I actually watched this in a drive-in with two other movies that I'm going to talk about. So yeah, 1992, there was a triple feature at a drive-in that I'll always remember. And yeah, I saw this movie before I saw any other Evil Dead movie, and I've just always really loved it. And I feel like it just gets better with age. And this 4K release from Scream Factory is absolutely phenomenal. This may be the best Scream Factory as far as the actual transfer release that came out in 2022. It just looked incredible. Now let's get into my third pick, and this, I've said it numerous times on this channel, this is my favorite comedy of all time. Wayne's World is a must own. If you have not seen Wayne's World, it is one of the best comedies of the 90s. This is based on an SNL skit with Mike Myers and Dana Carvey. And look, I just love this movie. I've talked about it ad nauseum on the channel. I feel like I just reviewed it not too long ago on 4K. It's endlessly quotable. The performances by Mike Myers and Dana Carvey are just some of the greatest comedic performances of all time, in my opinion. It was meta in a time where that didn't exist. So it kind of broke the fourth wall a lot and just made a lot of really funny jokes with it. And I just love it so much. Wayne's World is an absolute must-own if you don't have this movie. And I'm bringing out the Blu-ray because I really don't think it's necessary to own the 4K of this one. I wasn't that impressed with the 4K. It does look a little bit better than the Blu-ray, and the 4K is only like, I think, $18.99 right now. But this Blu-ray, I think you can still get the Steelbook for like $12.99 or something like that. So it's not too much. And I just love this Steelbook because it has all the Wayne's World, the classic Wayne's World quotes on it. But Wayne's World, look, one way or the other, whether it's Blu-ray or whether it's 4K, own Wayne's World in the collection. It's one of the greatest comedies of the 90s, and that one came out in 1992 as well. So how can you talk about, look, I brought up animation not too long ago. I think I talked about Beauty and the Beast, but how can you talk about 1992 without talking about one of arguably the best Disney animated movie ever made, and that is Aladdin. It's really tough to argue that against this movie for being one of the best animated movies of all time. Like, what can you say about Aladdin? Like, I just love this movie. I watched this movie so many times as a kid. Robin Williams as the genie may be the single greatest animated performance of all time. It's so iconic. It is so quotable. It's so hilarious. It's even hilarious to this day when you watch this movie. You can listen to Robin Williams as the genie and still laugh and crack up, and it's just so fantastic. Plus, it's just a great story with a great villain and a great hero and a great, you know, girl heroine, whatever you want to call her, with Jasmine. Every character in this movie has something to do, and they're all important, and it's just one of the greatest stories ever told in animation, in my opinion. I love Aladdin so much. It's such a great movie, and I believe this movie, correct, I don't know off the top of my head as I'm recording this if this has a 4K, but I'm pretty sure this movie does have a 4K. I just don't own it. I own the remake, the live action remake in 4K, but I don't own the animated movie. But look, whether or not you buy it on Blu-ray, whether or not you buy it on 4K, own Aladdin in the collection. If you haven't seen it, even if you're an adult that's never seen the movie before, I still recommend that you watch this movie. Such a great animated movie from 1992. And let's get into another movie. This is a part of the triple feature that I saw at the drive-in back in 1992. This is another movie that's extremely close to my heart, and that is A League of Their Own. And I got the 4K right here from the Columbia Classics Edition Volume 1, which is very hard to get right now. So I can't recommend this 4K because it would probably be very hard for you to get at this point. But I can definitely recommend this movie on Blu-ray for sure. And I've always loved this movie. This is the reason why I bought the Columbia Classics Volume 1, because it had A League of Their Own. And yeah, it's just one of those movies with Gina Davis, such a great cast. You got Bill Pullman in this movie. Tom Hanks, one of my favorite, absolute favorite Tom Hanks performances. There's no crying in baseball. I probably watched A League of Their Own more times when I was a kid than I watched Forrest Gump. Like, I just absolutely love this movie. Whenever I thought of Tom Hanks, I always thought of him as the coach, as the baseball coach from this movie. And I think about the scene where he walks into the locker room for the first time and he just goes to the urinal and he just pisses for like 2 minutes straight. Such a great scene. But I love A League of Their Own. It's again, another great story with the emotions and characters, great characters. There's a great dynamic between the sisters and how they're at odds the whole movie. I just love this story. It is my favorite sports movie of all time. So A League of Their Own is fantastic in my opinion. If you haven't seen it, whether or not you watch it on Blu-ray or 4K, it's still going to be fantastic. Watch it on streaming if there's any doubt. Check this movie out. I just want you to see it. It's such a great movie, such great actors and performers, and I love it. A League of Their Own, I would absolutely recommend. We got 5 more to cover, guys. We're going to try to get through this as quick as possible, but Deep Cover from 1992. I revisited this movie for the first time, I think, in like 20 years when it came out on Criterion. I think in 2021 this movie came out in the Criterion Collection, but it was such a cool release by Criterion, and this cover art is fantastic. But Jeff Goldblum, Lawrence Fishburne, it's like a crime thriller noir movie. It's such a cool story with great performances. It's a little awkwardly directed by Bill Duke, I would say. It's got a strange sensibility about it, but I still think it's really good and really effective. And I would absolutely recommend it. It's a really cool movie. And this Criterion has got some great special features that I would recommend it just for the special features because they're absolutely phenomenal. And I think one of them is a new interview with the director, Bill Duke, just talking about the making of this film. And yeah, Deep Cover, such a cool movie from 1992 that I don't think gets the appreciation it deserves. And getting into my next pick, this is another all-time favorite movie. I feel like I say that with a lot of these movies from the 90s, but this is a Robert Zemeckis film. And in my opinion, this is probably Robert Zemeckis' most underrated movie ever, and that is Death Becomes Her. Like, this is such a fun movie with a great cast. Meryl Streep is in this movie. Bruce Willis is in this movie. Goldie Hawn. And it's just such a fun story about 2 women discovering the fountain of youth and trying to win over this man and just the lengths that they will go to. It has a real like dark, supernatural vibe to it throughout that's just really cool. And Bruce Willis gives maybe my favorite Bruce Willis performance. I'm not exactly sure. It's so different than anything else that he's done. He's not like the action hero Bruce Willis type. He's kind of like the schlubby, almost like nerdy dude, but he's so funny in this movie as well. Like the role, and it's because like he's going such against like the type of character that he usually plays in movies. But I just feel like he does such a good job at it that when I sat down to watch this in adulthood, because I watched this movie all the time when I was a kid, but I wasn't really picking up on Bruce's performance. But when I watched it as an adult, I was like, damn, Bruce is really doing a great job here, because I just did not think he was capable of this type of performance. But Death Becomes Her is a really cool little movie from Robert Zemeckis, and if you have not seen it, from 1992, I would highly recommend it. And this Shout Scream Factor release, I would definitely recommend as well, because it's got some great special features. But again, I'll link that down below in the description. And let's get into, again, we got 3 left, guys, and we're going to talk about Innocent Blood. Now, this is a John Landis film from 1992, and I would not say that it's up there with American Werewolf in London. It's a different kind of movie. It's definitely more spicy, a little bit more seductive. It's kind of more like a Godfather type mob movie than it is just a straightforward monster movie. There's a lot of those elements in there as well. And I watched this movie as a kid, and I have kind of an interesting story with this. I remember watching this movie with my grandfather, which is kind of weird when I went back to watch it now, because she's like, there's like a full frontal like nudity scene in the very beginning of it. And I remember being like 7 or 8 when I watched this with my grandfather. But anyway, when it gets to the scene where she just kind of digs into that guy and just starts eating him and clawing at him and stuff, and there's blood flying everywhere, I remember my grandfather, and at the time I was scared to death of all this type of stuff, like horror stuff and all that. Again, I was like 7 or 8. My grandfather looked at me and he just said something that was very simple. He said, "You know all that's fake, right? You know, it's not real. It's all make-believe. It's all makeup and special effects." And just something about that, when he said that, it just clicked for me. And after that, I ate up all the horror movies. I started watching the Friday the 13th, The Nightmare on Elm Street, 1990s It. I just started watching horror like crazy. And I grew up like when I was 8, 9, 10. I was watching all kinds of horror movies. Psycho. And it was because it's something clicked for me there. I was like, oh, it's fake. Oh, well, now it's fun because it's fake. It's not real. And I just will always remember that experience. And it started with this movie, Innocent Blood. So like I said, it's a cool little movie. It's more like a mobster kind of film. It kind of reminds me of The Godfather a little bit. It's got the one guy in it, I'm trying to remember his name, Robert Loggia, who's in a lot of those kind of movies. So it kind of has that like Italian mobster kind of feel to it, wrapped up in this monster vampire film. And it's a really good movie. So I would recommend John Landis' Innocent Blood from 1992. And this Warner Archive release is a great release. It looks great. I got 2 left, guys, and I got some heavy hitters. I'm bringing it back around to some heavy hitting titles. Let's talk about a movie that I just watched for the first time last year for Western Month. It is the Best Picture winner of 1992, and that is Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven. When I watched this movie for the first time, it blew me away. Just the story and the character of Clint Eastwood, just the way that he plays it and the way that it develops. And Gene Hackman is such a great villain. And just to see Clint Eastwood get his revenge against him at the end, it was just so satisfying. Just everything about this movie is great. Morgan Freeman's in this film. He's absolutely great as well. And just such a great cast, so well directed by Clint Eastwood. And it was just one of those movies that I went through my entire life knowing of. And I feel like this movie definitely got hyped up a lot. I was like, the movie can't be that good. And when I watched it, I was like, damn, like this is just one of the best movies that I have seen in my entire life. So highly recommend Unforgiven if you haven't seen it. I mean, it's a Best Picture winner, won 4 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, and it absolutely deserved it. Such a great movie. Gene Hackman, I cannot overstate just how great Gene Hackman is in this movie as the villain. He is so nasty, so mean in this film, and I love him so much. And this 4K release from Warner Brothers is freaking fantastic as well. So highly recommend that. And getting into my last pick, this is one of the greatest horror films of all time, one of my personal favorite horror movies of all time, and that is 1992's Candyman. So Candyman, guys, we got to talk about Candyman, and I'm not going to say it. Look, I can say it one more time. Candyman is a great movie. Such a moody, atmospheric horror film, and Tony Todd is just so iconic as the character of Candyman. But when you watch this movie, when I watched it as a kid, like I was scared to death of the character of Candyman. But watching it as an adult, you really get into the character and you start to get into the nuances of the story. And it's really kind of a dark romance, you know, with him and Virginia Madison, who I also think is just phenomenal in this movie. And it's got great special effects and it's just scary. Like when you watch this film, it's just got such a mood and atmosphere to it. And it's just one of the greatest horror films of all time. And it's one of the reasons why when I saw the remake or the reboot or whatever the hell that thing was, I was so pissed off because I was like, that they did not capture the essence of what makes Candyman so great in that movie. But yeah, Candyman, look, regardless of what you want to say about the sequels or the new one, this one stands the test of time. To me, one of the greatest horror movies of all time, with one of the greatest horror scores. Like the music in this movie is so iconic as well. Just so well directed. Candyman, it deserves every single bit of hype and praise that it gets, in my opinion. It is still super underrated to me, even though it got a reboot and a lot of people talk about this movie. People don't seem to hold this up to the level of like a Shining or an Exorcist, and I think it plays in that class. I think it's one of the greatest horror films of all time, and that is 1992's Candyman, directed by Bernard Rose. So that's my list, guys. That is my 10 movies that you need to own on Blu-ray and 4K from 1992. Let me know in the comment section below, guys. Did I nail it? Did I miss a lot of movies? Let me know what those movies were in that comment section. I'm sure you guys have a lot of movies that I missed, but I appreciate you guys watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all the good stuff. Turn on the bell notifications for all future videos and follow me on all my social media accounts. Those links are down below in the description, and we'll see you next time.